Welcome to, I guess, one of the end of the year videos. You can tell it's the end of the year because of how poorly I've aged in the last year of trying to make content. Everyone's doing lists this time of year. Top 10 favourite films of the year, that kind of thing. I'm going to do one of those too. But until then, I'm not going to do the best of 2019. I'm going to do the rest of 2019. The films I didn't talk about in any good because people either wouldn't be interested or because I didn't have much to say. So I guess what I'm saying is this is a video that you're not going to be interested in. Does that make you want to watch the rest of the video? Let's remove ourselves from Christmas entirely and look at some of the great horror films that came out this year. 2019 was a massive year for horror. And I think one of the issues with that is that the film I want to talk about first really tried to kind of remove itself from horror. And I think because of that, a lot of people went away disappointed. And that's what I'm talking about, Brightburn.
Maybe there is something wrong with Brandon.
I will never turn against our son.
He's not my son!
Now, Brightburn really positioned itself as this dark Superman story. And I think because of that, a lot of people went in expecting gritty superhero movie. It's not that. It's actually a pretty effective little horror film. It reminded me a little bit of Chronicle. I think that's, pretty evident because it's a low-budget superhero film. But it's really dark, fairly violent. There's, obviously, if you've seen some of the footage from the trailers, there's things like glass going into eyes and stuff. So it's pretty extreme. This is a James Gunn film, or James Gunn written film, I should say. I enjoyed this a lot. I think it was one of those films that soared because people expected one thing and they got something else. But for this to be a kind of a horror film, I think it worked incredibly well. It's not necessarily a very original story. We've seen the dark, evil Superman millions of times, really. I mean, we saw it this year in The Boys on Amazon. But Brightburn, I thought, was a very effective little horror film. I thought the effects were good, especially for such a low budget. I thought the acting was good, particularly from Elizabeth Banks and that guy from The Office, Roy from The Office. I can't remember the actor's name. And even the little kid actor, I thought, did decent work. So I think this is the sort of film that, if you're looking for, something that's not too horror, it's not like a very extreme horror, but you want something that's a little bit darker around this time of year, a little bit of a darker take on a superhero film, you could go far worse than Brightburn. I think it's a film that really was possibly a victim of the way it was marketed. But it's quite a fun movie. I think it doesn't deserve the drubbing that it got. I think this is pretty decent. Now, to give it a bit of balance, when I saw this in cinema, as soon as it ended, I was thinking, hey, that was pretty good. And the person behind me said, that was absolute shit. I think that was his quote. So yeah, those are the two quotes in the poster. It's pretty good, and that was absolute shit. If you want to check out Brightburn, maybe you'll fall somewhere in between. Going to a film that had an even lower budget and probably less awareness was The Girl on the Third Floor.
You want my advice? Get your husband and your baby far away from that house.
This came from independent director Travis Stevens and stars CM Punk, former wrestler. I wasn't sure what to expect going into this. I didn't see many of the trailers, I saw it a little bit. This film is like a nightmare. And I mean that in an absolutely glowing way. It's full of like an old school kind of practical, those like 70s horror movies when you see them and it's just like all this goo and slime. It's full of that kind of thing, which I really love. It kind of felt like, when you watch like The Thing, John Carpenter's The Thing, and it's just slime and, you're kind of like half repulsed, half scared. There's a lot of that in this movie. It had a real sense of grit that I quite enjoyed. CM Punk was very good in this, actually. I'm a wrestling fan. I thought CM Punk brought a real, I won't say likability, because the character really is incredibly unlikable. But because of that, it was the sort of case where we're seeing this character be basically tortured over the course of the film. And I don't know if we ever necessarily feel bad for him, but it really is a kind of a complex character in that we kind of are rooting for this guy initially, then we grow to hate him, and then there's a certain degree of sympathy towards him. It's interesting seeing the film from that perspective, but essentially the story is just this guy moves into a house that he's doing up, and I mean, I don't want to give anything else away, that something's not right about this house. He's got a kind of a weird neighbour. There's a lot of stuff you could dig into with this movie as far as imagery. It reminds me of an Ari Aster film in that regard. But I really enjoyed it. It kind of feels like a kind of not a remake, but it feels like it was an homage to The Shining, and it mixed with kind of a splatter horror of the 80s. And I really liked it. It felt like a bit of a throwback. It was dark, but it was a pleasant surprise out of the horror of the movies this year. Ironically enough, I was talking about The Shining, and can't talk about The Shining without talking about the sequel to The Shining that came out this year, Doctor Sleep.
You're magic. Like me.
I don't know about magic. I always called it The Shining.
Now, this is the movie I was initially going to do an Any Good on. In fact, I have loads of stuff filmed for a joke, but time just kind of passed by to the point where it didn't feel worth it anymore. And I mean, the film didn't really make that much of an impact for a lot of people. And it's kind of it's a very strange movie, because had I not known there was an actual book of Doctor Sleep, I would have assumed this was some lazy cash grab in some ways, because it really forces that Shining stuff on you. Like, there's so many callbacks and stuff that feels a little forced. I'm not sure if the book is like that. I mean, kudos to Mike Flanagan, I believe, is the director, for somehow blending the book, the original Shining, and the Shining movie. Because, of course, the book and the movie of the original Shining, famously, Stephen King did not like it because it differed too much. So somehow, he seemed to make everyone happy and get a blend of everything. And you know what? It's strange because you have to view this film on two levels. You have to view it as a film in itself, and view it as a sequel to The Shining. You know, The Shining, one of the greatest films of all time, now has a sequel, which is strange. But, for a sequel to The Shining, this is a damn good movie. I will say, like, it's not a perfect movie, but it's a lot better than what I expected. There's a lot of great ideas in here. I love the visual style it has. There's a lot of, you know, kind of twisted, nightmarish cinematography and some set pieces that are just really imaginative visually that I really enjoyed. And I think the other thing is, I don't know why this is becoming a trend in horror films recently, where films are like 2.5 hours long. This movie did not need to be that long at all. It could have really been edited down. I don't know if that turned off some people from seeing this movie. Very possibly did. But it's a very good movie. And as I said, viewing it on its own merits, it's really good. But it's kind of hard to divorce it from you know, The Shining, because it leans so heavily on it. The performances, Ewan McGregor makes a great Danny Torrance. I mean, he's a fantastic actor in general, but he really, really did a great job here. The little kid actor was also fantastic. Jacob Tremblay is in this for like 10 minutes. I don't know why. Rebecca Flanagan, I think, is Rebecca Ferguson. Sorry, Flanagan is the director. Rebecca Ferguson is kind of over the top as the villain, but I enjoyed it. It's sort of, you know, it feels like a very Stephen King movie. I know that sounds kind of funny because it is a Stephen King, but what I mean is that it relies very much on the tropes we expect from King. But there's a lot of fantastic horror elements here that I really enjoyed. I love I can't remember their names now, the kind of basically the psychic vampire kind of characters were very creepy. It was very well shot. And I think, you know, the ending, the kind of last act of it is a lot of fun. You know, this has all been in the trailers, I guess, brief spoilers, but all the stuff in the last act is in the Overlook. And I thought it managed to bring that stuff back in a way that it didn't feel too forced. It was a very, very fun finale that managed to build off the foundation that the original Shining built. I also want to say one thing I really liked about this, and it's such a minor thing, but in an age where we're all going mad for bringing back actors through CGI or de-aging people, I love that this film didn't do that. That we had recast versions of Shelley Duvall, recast versions of the young Danny Torrance. And you don't even think about it. Like, I don't get this obsession with spending millions on de-aging things. They gave very, very brief performances that were really fantastic. And it goes the same for the person playing Scatman Crothers. I don't think this film did particularly well. I don't know if we necessarily need more of the story. Anyway, I know there was talks of like a prequel with Scatman Crothers' character. I don't think we need that. But yeah, this is a decent movie. I actually quite enjoyed it. A bit long, but aside from that, well worth checking out. As a sequel to The Shining, you know, this is probably as good as you could possibly get. You want to hear my next film? Well, ready or not, films.
At midnight, you have to play a game.
Why
It's just something we do when someone new joins the family.
A game. What game? Hide and seek? Are we really gonna play that?
This is one of those films where I'm not entirely sure how to classify it. I guess it's a horror film, but it's also, very tongue-in-cheek, comedic, kind of to a dark degree, and it's also a bit of a thriller. It's one of those films that I think, Knives Out is playing out. I think that someday this is going to make a great double bill with Knives Out. It's funny because it also reminds me of Adam Wingard's film You're Next from a few years ago. But I actually didn't like You're Next. A lot of people really loved it, whereas this film I thought was really good. I thought it had a degree of self-awareness. I love the way it was shot. It had such a beautiful kind of gothic style to it, kind of like a Guillermo del Toro film to a certain degree. And there's no one necessarily of any massive note in this. I think acting-wise, Andy McDowell is in it, very briefly. The lead is played by Samara Weaving, who I'm sure I've seen in other things. I can't say I'm familiar with her work, but she's so good in this movie. Has such a kind of innocence about her character, without it being like this kind of pushover character. Like female characters, in a lot of these films, a lot of the time they become either, they become like just pure innocence, and then they're just a very flat, uninteresting character. This character had grit and had a lot of interesting things about her, where she just felt like a really strong, actual person. Like it felt like this could be a real person you would meet. The scenario is so over the top. It's hilarious. Basically, they're all in this house, and as a tradition on marriage, this board game family, their wealth and their riches are based on that board game empire. And they decide that every time someone gets married, they have to pull a card, and the card can range from playing chess, or in this case, hide and seek, which involves the bride going to try hide, and everyone else trying to seek her out and kill her. So yeah, very dark, ridiculous premise. But it's a lot of fun, and it's something that I think a few people are going to be turned off in that they're not sure what it's going for, whether it's very, very dark or very, very funny. Personally, I don't mind that. I found it to be very comedic when it was meant to be comedic. I thought that, a lot of the characters are kind of over-the-top, snooty portrayals. Very unlikable characters. For nearly every character, basically, actually, is totally unlikable. Except for our lead, of course. The kind of suspense for the film lasts for, I would say, most of the duration of the film, which is exactly what you need to keep you invested. I think, it's one of those films that I think, even in my head, I'm actually starting to blur, the line is starting to blur with Knives Out, because they do seem quite familiar to me. Or quite similar, I should say. And I love the way it kind of starts. It kind of lures you into this sense of false security, which is exactly how our character feels, before turning into this twisted nightmare. And then the ending is holy crap. If you thought it was ridiculous before, the ending is so ridiculous. I loved it. Some people are going to hate it, but it's the most hilariously over-the-top great ending, in my opinion, that I saw this year. Ready or Not is absolutely worth checking out. Well, as you can probably guess from my ludicrous accent, I am Irish, and I did see a kind of Irish horror comedy as well, going from one kind of horror comedy, slightly, to another one. But this one is a much more broad comedy, and that was Extraordinary.
Why don't we see ghosts every day?
Ugh, leave me alone.
Most hauntings are so small, they go unnoticed.
I kind of have a strange relationship with Irish film in that at times I feel like there's some films that are just double down on being like, oh, we're Irish. And because of that, Irish people eat it up, and some people, I guess, eat up the Irish charm. That annoys me, that kind of sentimentality. This film borders on it, but never fully embraces it. There's enough originality here that I really enjoyed it. I thought it was very funny. Basically, the story is that there's this woman played by Maeve Higgins. I believe she actually wrote the film as well, so well done for Maeve. Who's a kind of an up-and-coming Irish talent, who I think was, hopefully, based on the success of this film, might be going on to greater things. She's a driving instructor, but her father and her, when she was younger, were kind of these paranormal sort of investigators in rural Ireland. And she's kind of in a bit of a rush because of some incident that happened with her father years and years ago. And now she kind of ends up being sucked back into the paranormal world, as it were. And I thought this movie was so much fun. It kind of felt like she was a character like she was a real person. Like, it just felt like, in a movie that's so out there and ridiculous, she felt like a believable character. And one thing I also really loved in general was the cast. She had a sister who was fantastically cast. That was also kind of the love interest, who was, you know, this man whose wife had died, and that kind of is how she gets involved in the story. And you know, she's basically just you know, your everyday kind of single middle-aged woman, but it doesn't fall back on all the tropes that kind of come with that, especially in comedic circles. But I also love the kind of, she's very kind of blasé about all the paranormal stuff, which I thought was very fun.
Hello, little ghost lady! No. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were dead.
Also, the biggest name actor in this, Will Forte? Yeah, Will Forte. I always get Will Forte and Bill Hader confused. Will Forte is in this. He is fantastic in this film. So his character, I love this character. This character is a musician who had one really big hit and moved to Ireland to kind of retire into this big gothic kind of castle. So he's kind of got local fame in Ireland. This is, by the way, this sounds like a very Irish movie, and it really is, because there's, you know, you can kind of believe this kind of thing because it did really happen for a while. He's retired to Ireland. He basically a washed up celebrity who's now involved in satanic rituals. He's kind of wants to sacrifice someone to kind of get talent back. He's hilariously over the top. You know, he's going around in fur coats, leather gloves. It's a really fun film, and he's fantastic in it. I was also just really impressed with how much they did with what must have been so little. The special effects in this film were fantastic. I just really was very, very impressed with them. They were almost flawless, especially coming into the last act. The last act is so... maybe it's if I had a flaw with it, maybe it goes a little bit too supernatural. It's a little bit weird. The rest of the film is kind of very kind of low grade supernatural, and then, you know, it makes sense that you kind of build up to that. I mean, even look at a film like Ghostbusters, the major supernatural stuff kind of occurs at the end with Gozer and all that. So I guess it owes something to that to a certain degree. I guess I'm calling this the Irish Ghostbusters, which it kind of is, to be honest, when I think about it. Yeah, this is a really fun film. It's funny, it's creative. I talked about the special effects. There's a lot of good practical effects in there as well that I really enjoy. I love there's a part where like the widow gets possessed by his wife, and the actor there did a fantastic job. The way they just kind of seamlessly blend into portraying his wife when he's possessed by her. This is a very fun film. You should go out of your way to check this out. It's not just a film that I love because it's Irish and because I'm Irish. I thought there was genuinely a lot of love and craft put into this film. It kind of speaks to a small town setting more than it does an Irish setting. So definitely, if you gotta check out, if you're looking for something that's a bit comedic, a little bit horror focused, but not necessarily too much, that's just a kind of a quirky supernatural film, you should check out Extraordinary. Well, if you want proof that I don't just back a film because it's Irish, let's talk about The Last Rite.
Hi, Louis. It's cold weather.
Mum's gone forever. No, there's just you to look after me.
Yeah.
Was it homemade?
No.
So The Last Rite, the basic story is that, and the thing is, I really bought into this movie at the start. I was really interested. So the premise is that we begin with this man coming back from Boston to Ireland, because that's where he was born. And there's a man next to him, played by Bishop Len Brennan, if you've ever seen Father Ted.
If you ever try to bullshit me like that again, I will rip off your arms.
He also has the same surname as him, Murphy, which is, you know, the most common name in Ireland, so that's not a surprise. And basically, he's filling out the immigration form, and he puts the American chap as his next of kin. And the American, or the Irish man, the old Irish man, is actually bringing his brother back from America, who just died. Basically, he'd been alienated from his brother. And he puts the American lad coming back to Ireland as his next of kin, and he dies on the plane. Meaning that now, this character, the American character who's kind of moved away from Ireland, is left with the responsibility, seemingly, of, you know, basically everyone assuming that's his father. And he finds out that this man is from, you know, up north of Ireland. Well, the film is set in Cork, by the way, which is my locality, so I also thought that would have been a factor in me liking it, but I really didn't help necessarily, even though I've been to a lot of places this was filmed. So he has basically this, coffin, and he wants to get the coffin up to the north, and it becomes a sort of a sentimental family drama. He's coming back from America because his mother died. He's got I shouldn't say that. That's a spoiler. But he's got a strained relationship with his brother, who has autism. And, it's kind of that thing of along the way, they're like, we're going to bring this body to its rightful burial place up north. See, it sounds very kind of like an independent movie right there, to a flaw, I would say. It's then also, has a character who's kind of, also in a kind of part of the life again. We got a lot of melodrama, a lot of backstory, a lot of tense family relationship stuff, a lot of quirky comedy. I was the only one in the cinema when I saw this. Yeah, it didn't land for me. I thought it was well acted. I didn't necessarily like the lead actor. I thought he was very much just kind of like, it's like when someone does an impression of an American, that kind of way. I don't know, maybe that's how he really talks, I'm not sure. I thought the young actor who played the autistic kid did fairly good. I do think, I don't know, I'm not always comfortable with depictions of autism in cinema. It feels like they always just kind of become one character, which, I think isn't true of people with autism. It varies to a lot of degrees. I did like the female lead. I thought that was very well acted. I thought she was very likeable at times, even though our lead actor really at times wasn't likeable. And then we have, a lot of supporting characters. Colm Meaney is in this. Who's the other guy in this? Brian Cox is in this, very, very briefly. They're fine. I don't think they had to put much effort into their roles. They were perfectly acceptable. I did like, there was a guard who was, the police characters in Ireland. A female actress there was kind of this, like, over her head, just started the job. I liked her. I thought she did a good portrayal. I thought she was quite funny as well. But yeah, I couldn't help but feel that the film didn't have a lot of plot. It was very, very predictable. It was just, we're going to get this here, and along the way maybe we'll bond. We can repair those broken bonds of our family. And then it throws in, it feels like that they know the story is so thin there that they throw in a few melodramatic twists. That just didn't really work for me. I just thought they felt like a bit over the top. What annoyed me most, I think, as well, was that kind of made me say, oh, fuck this movie, was when you come into the end, I was like, oh, it's going to go this way. I thought there was going to be really something different about the movie, but instead, it just wound up exactly where I thought it was going to go, and I just kind of gave up on it. So I wasn't a fan of The Last Rite. Check it out if you're interested. If you want to check out an Irish movie, an independent movie, maybe you'll enjoy it. Obviously, there were people out there that enjoyed this, but it just wasn't for me. I don't know if it's really been a great year for comedy in general, to be honest. But there was 2 films out this year that kind of jumped on or were marketed as super bad, and we had Booksmart, which was like super bad but girls. And the one I'm going to talk about is Good Boys, which is basically super bad, but they're a lot younger this time.
I don't want to go to Soren's party not knowing how to kiss. We could spy on my neighbor. She's a total nymphomaniac.
Hey, Stranger Things, go fuck yourself!
Now, when I saw trailers for this, I'm not a prude. I'm not a Puritan. I kind of saw trailers for this and I was like, seems a little bit gross. Like, you're just putting kids in these really sexual situations and hoping it works. And it kind of felt a bit like, this is a bit uncomfortable. But, I went into it with a pretty open mind, and I came out kind of enjoying it. I was, I won't say it was always hilarious, but it was pretty funny at times. Even the grosser humour got me laughing, which I didn't think it would. Normally that's not really my kind of cup of tea. And the kind of Superbad label is very appropriate in this regard. I don't think it was appropriate in the case of Booksmart, which I might talk about later. But it felt very much like the film did have a decent amount of heart, and it, as much as, especially the trailers kind of pushed it as this gross sex comedy with kids, it was very much kind of playing off the kind of childhood innocence of not knowing all the facts, or not knowing kind of how it did work in these situations, or kind of, being open to this new world as you become older and kind of get into your teenage years. And I thought that was quite sweet. I also want to say, the child actors in this movie were all fantastic. This film literally is really going to be made or broken on these performances. I thought they were all good. You know, obviously we know Jacob Tremblay can act, but the other two actors were also really, really funny. I thought they had a kind of a sense of a heart that this film needed. It was surprising how much I enjoyed it. I liked the kind of side plot of them kind of trying to, blackmail these older girls about drugs. I thought that was quite entertaining. There's some good little cameos in there that I enjoyed. Not many, mind you. And yeah, there's not much else to say about it. It's pretty funny. It's one of the better comedies of the year, but I think that's more based on the fact that there wasn't many good comedies this year. There wasn't many comedies at all, really, seemingly. But yeah, check it out. There's a little bit of heart in it. It's a little bit gross. And yeah, it is about kids, and there is some pretty disgusting stuff in there. But there's also heart, and a lot about the kind of, growing up, accepting and embracing the wider world as you get older. So check out Good Boys. Sometimes you just sort of go to a film not really knowing what to expect. I kind of had low expectations and had sort of judged to a certain degree. Hustlers.
You get a little bag.
These Wall Street guys. You see what they did to this country? They stole from everybody. Hardworking people lost everything. And not one of these douchebags went to jail.
The game is rigged, and it does not reward people who play by the rules.
Before it came out, because, the basic plot is, these women who are strippers are basically drugging and robbing these men, and I don't know, I was very uncomfortable with kind of the lead up to this, because there was a lot of people that were like, yeah, girl power, and I'm like, okay, but that's pretty criminal. So I was unsure how the film was going to handle it, but that being said, I actually thought this film was pretty great. It was funny, one of the funnier films of the year, actually, when I think about it. The performances were all really good. Constance Wu, I think, is the actress's name, who's one of the leads. Jennifer Lopez, really, really great in this film. You sometimes forget, mainly because of her choices, but how great of an actress she can be, and she's really good in this film. Of kind of have this kind of, den mother, kind of slightly scary, but also you can kind of see why people would like her. So you kind of got this real sinister kind of sweet side mixed together that I really enjoyed with that character. I don't think I necessarily need to say plot. I think a lot of people are aware of this movie already, but yeah, it's about strippers, and it kind of, what I liked about it was I was worried that the plot would just be kind of all that, and it's not really. It sort of documents this person who's just getting into the dancing business, and it kind of chronicles it up to its height, and then there's the boom, or sorry, not the boom, the bust, I guess, no pun intended, and basically the bottom falls out of these dancing venues. A lot of people come in that are immigrants, and basically they kind of have to readjust, and that's what happens. And it takes a sort of a political standpoint of, we're robbing people from Wall Street, the same people who fucked up our living, we're now fucking up theirs. I don't think the morality of this film is necessarily strong, but I don't think it ever kind of says like everything they're doing is alright. It doesn't always show them in a good light. It kind of really reminded me of The Wolf of Wall Street. It sort of felt like that. It's kind of like a women's version of that, involving dancing and stripping, which is really, interesting. And I find it kind of strange that people were kind of like celebrating The Wolf of Wall Street and then being like, oh, well, Hustlers, though, that's immoral, I think they're kind of two sides of the same coin. Both are kind of doing somewhat reprehensible actions, but I think as long as you go into it with that in mind, you will enjoy this film a lot. And I don't think the film ever shies away from it showing that what they did is wrong. The whole framing device is basically kind of interviewing these people because it was so criminal, and eventually they do face repercussions, and maybe even more so than The Wolf of Wall Street did to a certain degree. And I also think what is good is that I was really grateful for this film being the length that it was. It wasn't like dragged out. It was a nice, breezy watch. I also think you have to give a lot of props to the dancing in this film. Incredibly impressive stuff. From a physical standpoint, it was just outstanding. I think Jennifer Lopez did her own dancing in this movie, which is amazing, the athleticism involved. But yeah, this is well acted. I thought it was funny. Again, people were digging into the morality of this movie, and I was, guilty of that as well to a certain degree, but I quite enjoyed this movie. I might have been the only man that saw this movie that is single, but you know, it was a lot of fun to see it. I would definitely say check it out if you get a chance. Hustlers.
We didn't do